Welcome to another episode of Bleav in the Broncos on the Bleav Network, sponsored by Bet Online. I am Patrick Chiotti. That's Bri Maestas. Bri, the NFL draft is almost here, and the Denver Broncos have yet to lay out the cards. NFL owner meetings are going on. We're getting a lot of news, some interviews from Sean Payton, GM George Paton, Greg Penner from the Penner Ownership Group. Lots to talk about today. First and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I mentioned to you earlier today via text that we had two brain cells if you fused them together. So I think we're right on path to have a great show and a great recap of what we've learned in the last week. Listen, it's the dry season for information as it comes to the Broncos, but there's little nuggets of information that we can roll on. Speaking of nuggets, Nikola Jokic deserves that next MVP. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
Well, I think that he does. I definitely think that Nikola Jokic is the best basketball player in the world. People are going to fight me on that. I might get some negative comments from Blazers fans, but
send them to me.
I don't care. Yeah, I'll forward them to you. Bri, you can bet still on who the NBA MVP will be, thanks to our sponsor, Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. The Final Four is upon us, and Bet Online has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. Who do you got winning it all?
For the championship, it's got to be Houston.
I'm going with Cooper Flag, but Bet Online has the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to MLB, NHL, and UFC, and even the Kentucky Derby and NFL season futures that are ready for you to bet on. In between games, head on over to the Bet Online Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Bet Online, the game starts here. And Bri, where we're going to start is not in Denver, Colorado, but in sunny, beautiful Florida, where the NFL owners meetings, well, sunny, muggy, you get it. The NFL.
I don't subscribe to that. It's humid and it's full of lizards.
It's true. They fall out of trees sometimes. The NFL owner meetings going on. The big thing is always the picture that happens every year. I think there was only one coach, Raheem Morris, I Bleav, who was not in that picture. Sean Payton standing next to his protege, Dan Campbell, who was towering over him. But lots of interesting nuggets that came out of that, came out of the meetings. Some of those rules that we talked about in the last episode, some of them came to wishing. The kickoff rule, I Bleav they changed the touchback rule. That's going to be interesting to see how teams approach that on the special teams front this season. Tush push rule, set aside. They're going to talk about it at a different time. Overtime rules, I think they passed that one as well, where overtime rules are going to be the same as the playoffs. That's a big one. I think that's pretty massive, with all the complaints from every team in the league every year, it seems. Finally, they get their wish. Sean Payton did say it's nice to have continuity between the regular season rules and the postseason rules. But Bri, the most interesting thing that I wanted to touch on was the comments from Sean Payton, GM George Paton, and Greg Penner, who all had different things to say about the Broncos' approach in the NFL draft. Sean Payton saying that there's a ton of talent at the top of the top of the running back group. They definitely want to add somebody. George Paton saying that there's value in rounds 2 to 6. That's not foreshadowing at all. And then Greg Penner kind of being very vague on that. What do you think about these comments? And do you think that this is a telltale sign that maybe the Broncos aren't going to take a running back at 20?
I haven't felt that they'd take a running back at 20. I still feel like defense is the side of the ball, depending on who's there, right? We have this conversation all the time. If the best player available is defensive lineman, I think that you have to do it. And I just think because the draft has so many different, I Bleav the word flavors was used there in that ownership meeting, that there's a lot of versatility and variability in the draft for running backs. And I don't think that the Broncos necessarily have to chase down one individual. Now, are there some playmakers and some generational talents that are sprinkled there up at the top? Sure. But most of them are going to be depleted and aren't of necessity for the Broncos as they get to pick number 20. And there's also a very big opportunity for the Broncos to be strategic, opportunistic, and kind of sit back on their heels a little bit when it comes to their first pick in the draft as it may stand. So could be not at 20. Could be a little bit back. I think the Broncos will be smart here because they're not chasing anything. They're in a great opportunity, and mentioning the idea that they're not in the market for a quarterback is a huge gain for the Broncos, that they aren't going to need to make those pressing moves where they're chasing guys at the top of the board. So I feel really strongly that the running back position for the Broncos is still of greatest need, but it's not something that they need to be, I guess, fervent. You're not going out of your way to get one of these guys near the top. I just don't see it happening. And I know it's going to be to the chagrin of most of Broncos country if their guy doesn't get picked. It's wild. And I did a little foreshadowing myself when we started this program in the off season of there's going to be some crazy narrative slinging, and there's going to be this rise and separation and where Broncos country thinks the ideal running back for these circumstances is going to be. And we're seeing right now that it's probably not going to fall in line with what individuals, whether it's analysts alike, are going to see for this team. And I love that you counted the rounds 2 through 6, right? So I don't take a whole lot of stock. It comes with I think we learned the new saying, bucket of salt, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's not just a grain of salt here, it's a bucket of it, because Sean's not telling you anything that he's doing. He's not going to flash his cards, he's not going to show his hand, and he's got a heck of a poker face when it comes to talking about the different positions of need for the Broncos. So I think they're in a good spot, and I'm not the kind. I know I upset people when I talk about the draft and all of the speculation that comes with this time period. I'm one of those people who just sits back. I can't wait for the things to happen. There's some interesting prospects where I get shiny object syndrome and I get really excited about what's going on in the conversations, but I'm not rooted in the idea that there's one guy the Broncos have to add and it's going to change the entire progression of next season. So, it's an interesting concept. I love that everyone has a variable answer, though. All three of those guys are in constant communication. They're in tandem. They're in sync. But the answers are kind of leaving so much to be discerned from it. And I wish they would give us more, but then I don't. What is the benefit of Broncos country, of being a fan, an analyst, a talking head, if you will, to knowing exactly what they're going to do? It would rob you of all of the joy from all of your mock drafts and everything that goes in line with that. So it's supposed to be that way, right?
Yeah. All 300 of those mock drafts, by the way, all 300 of them, one of them's got to hit.
Right.
One of them, at least one has to hit.
Screenshot it, keep it in your folder so you can say, look, I knew all along. I picked this guy.
There's definitely somebody out there that does that. I think I think that's a really great point. And it's always, we don't know what we don't know. We can make assumptions all day and night. But at the end of the day, and I said this to somebody on Twitter, because I posted about a mock draft that I saw from Corey Kinnan from Daft on Draft, who had the Broncos taking Caleb Johnson from Iowa at 20. And I've written a piece for Let's Talk Broncos that kind of talks about Caleb Johnson and how he would fit in the Broncos offense. I think he would be a fantastic fit. And if he's the pick at 20, great. And somebody commented, that's a awful reach, yada, yada, yada. But we also don't know how the team is seeing some of these prospects. Like if they see, if they do see a guy like Caleb Johnson being a higher rated prospect at 20 than somebody else like Omarion Hampton, who was still on the board during that mock draft, then that's how the team views him. And we as fans and we as analysts cannot change how the team is feeling. The mock drafts aren't going to change how they feel, right? They've kind of touched on that in the past. But to your point, what if defensive line is their utmost position, right? What if receiver is a higher rated position? We know that they were looking at veteran receivers. Courtland Sutton's contract is going to be up after this season. We'll talk about that later in the show. But what if they have somebody who's on their draft board at that position that they value more than a different position? That's just the way that the cookie crumbles. We see it all the time. Every year when the draft rolls around, most of the time teams take a player that a lot of people didn't think that they would take at that spot, or didn't even see them really
like
being in the market.
A cornerback at 9.
Like a cornerback. We need a quarterback, but we're going to take a cornerback instead. The outrage that happened, right? And now we look back on that and say, man, that was the right call. So I think as fans and as analysts, it's fun to do mock drafts. It's fun to do those exercises. But at the end of the day, we don't know how the teams are viewing these players. I mean, hell, how many people really truly had the Broncos taking Bo Nix at 12 last year? How many of them actually had them taking Bo Nix at 12? Not a lot. They didn't even have him in the first round. A lot of them didn't have Bo Nix going in the first round. So I think the point is, we don't know how Sean Payton, George Paton are viewing these prospects. And it could be completely different from what some of us think. Maybe linebacker is a position that they're looking at. Maybe they're looking at adding another corner or another safety with that 20th overall pick. Maybe they go after an offensive lineman. Who knows? But it's really about what the team thinks about a certain prospect, not about what we think in our mock draft exercises.
Pat, you perfectly set up our 7-round mock draft that we're about to get into.
Right and welcome to Bri. You did mention Sean Payton's comments about not being in the quarterback market this year, and he said he's glad to not be in this quarterback market because of how messy it was. And could you imagine them being in this position, in the position that they were in last year, this year, with this class of quarterbacks? I don't know how I would feel.
Do you think it was double-edged? Not only is he like, oh, I'm so relieved because we're not talking about quarterbacks this time around, but also I'm so relieved. He's looking straight into the camera. Honestly, I think it's twofold there.
Russell Wilson, I'm happy to not be in this quarterback market. Goodness gracious.
Good. And I feel, bad for some of the quarterbacks coming out at this time too, for where the market is as far as what teams are looking for a quarterback. So it's almost the perfect storm of, I think that there will be definitely some talent from this pool. I am probably biased, but I hope Shedeur Sanders sees the most success that he possibly can, because I dig his style, right? But you have Jackson Dart and Cam Ward and all of these other talents here that I'm just so glad we're not having the cute Quinn Ewers don't want to have to consider. Don't make me consider that. Okay, let's just all put ourselves into the context and the mindset of, we don't have Bo Nix, or Bo Nix didn't work out at all, and he took the JJ McCarthy route and got injured, whatever it is. And the Broncos are now quarterback poor again, and it's Quinn. And that's what we have. And I just don't think that I could do it. And I couldn't talk myself up into that pick and it being some sort of possibility for the Broncos. So yes, I am also glad. And I'm right there with Sean Payton saying it's the best news to come out of there. But I also think that it's interesting because it just ties together the idea and what I was saying to start the conversation about where the Broncos go from there is they don't have to make these crazy decisions. And it's so cool to see the chessboard play out now that we have that in hindsight. Like we no longer have to reflect on the years of swinging away and making the choices and forgetting to have a plan C when it comes to backup quarterbacks. And they're seemingly tackling that on all fronts now. Like, do I think Sam Ellinger is a long term? No, but the idea is they're constantly churning their brain power to make sure that the Broncos are in that position again. And I think that's what's most important is you're no longer chasing your tail thinking the carousel is never ending. Like we are not the Jets of the NFL right now. Like we don't have to worry about that. And Zach Wilson can live a long, happy life out in Miami. I hope,
he's going to do fine. I mean, we talked about it before. I think Miami was a great landing spot for Zach. Part of me was hoping that maybe they brought him back, on a one-term deal, because he's still young. There's still a lot of untapped potential. There were a lot of people who were saying he was the best quarterback in Broncos camp last year, which is kind of crazy to look back at now. But just the fact that he's still a player that has tools. It's just, can he get the coaching necessary to hone in those tools? You did mention Sam Ellinger. Yes, the Broncos signed him, former 6th-round pick in 2021 out of Texas, drafted by the Indianapolis Colts, played in 8 games, 573 passing yards, 3 tutties, 3 interceptions, took 14 sacks in those 8 games, 76.1 passer rating, and a 33.8 QBR. This is not this is a camp body battle type of signing. This isn't going to be, I think Jarrett Stidham will end up still being the backup quarterback for Bo Nix, but it doesn't hurt to bring in another guy. I also wouldn't be surprised if they bring in another guy, either at the bottom of the draft or as a UDFA. Wouldn't surprise me because Sean Payton is a guy who likes to take some risks. And it's adding more talent to the room, right? But Bri, there's some other notes from the owners' meeting. Greg Penner discussed the stadium situation that's currently going on. For those who aren't aware, I don't know how you're not aware, but the Broncos stadium lease is up in 2030, as you said. And then they have the option to lease it out for 5-year increments? Is that right?
Yeah, I think there's 2 5-year increments, and I think it would expire through the 2030 season. So, like you had said, the 2031 would kind of be where you're up in arms about where you go. That's crazy to think that that's right around the corner. I'm sorry, the year 2030 is just over there.
Gross. Don't say that.
But also, yeah, it's time to start thinking about it.
It is. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation about the Broncos stadium situation. Is it a terrible stadium in terms of like the other stadiums around the league? It's not the best, but it's certainly not the worst. It could use some upgrades. I would agree. They've already done a fantastic job of upgrading what they have now, adding the big video board and adding more seating and boxes and stuff like that. But I think that moving the stadium is one of the options that maybe has a lot of Broncos fans worried, upset. I feel like the stadium's in a great spot right now in downtown Denver. I don't know. We're going to get your thoughts about it, but I think that it's in a fine spot. They've mentioned a few locations, but most recently Aurora was listed as a potential landing spot for the Broncos' new stadium. It'd be closer to their facilities. And they've also, I think they also said that they were thinking about moving it actually pretty close to the facilities, like really, really close. How do you feel about this stadium situation? And do you think that building a new stadium in a different location is the way to go?
It's a loaded question
I know.
because you have to take into consideration the long-standing location of all, both stadiums being right on top of each other. It
Yeah.
almost begs the question as to why are you trying to disrupt, I guess, what has always worked. Now, as the populace continues to morph and change and evolve in Denver, it's getting less and less kind of reasonable to go
Mhm.
down that track. And obviously, if you've never been to Mile High, interesting, but make the pilgrimage because I think it's important to see
Beautiful.
it where it is right now.
Mhm.
And it's not right in the heart of downtown. It is kind of off to the side.
Okay.
It's right off the highway,
Oh,
but it's
you
it's
know
not.
what I mean.
Well, I know, but I mean, in the general context of is you're not jam packed on a one way street trying to get into the
Yeah.
parking and the facility, and so it's almost like a beautiful marriage where it just sort of works. But I think the conversation has to do a lot with like some sort of greediness where it probably is impacting the city of Denver in their hopes to kind of grow and mature out of what currently exists. And just like a lot of metropolitan stadiums, it butts up against neighborhoods. Like my
Yeah.
parking lot, as a season ticket holder, I can, wave to the residents who are, living right there next to the
Yeah.
parking lot. So it's a
Yeah.
part of me is like, I understand that maybe that is the old world of thinking. And alongside new ownership, especially being the rich Walton Penner group of Walmart,
Yeah.
that says that they have the ways and the means to do so. But a new stadium comes with costs and taxes that as a season ticket holder, I'm terrified of the idea of having to lease out my seating agreement, do go by
Yeah.
the way of the Raiders and have to purchase it almost as if it's like a down payment on a home. Now, being biased as I am, I think that there is benefits and losses when it comes to that. But if you move a stadium all the way outside of the metro area, because in Colorado it takes 30 minutes to get wherever you're trying to go. So when
Anywhere.
you're talking about Aurora, which has pockets of good and bad, and like just like Denver does, you also have the opportunity to create space from a lot of that chaos and bedlam. So
Yeah.
you'd be able to kind of this is the Broncos Park. And Aurora and Lone Tree, which are two of the rumored locales for a new stadium, are intermittently like close to the Broncos Park and facility that they're presently working on.
Yeah.
I am a little bit biased that if you're gonna move it, Lone Tree is cool because just down the street, but
Perfect for you.
perfect for me. But why are we clamoring, I guess, for a new stadium when this one isn't necessarily degraded? I mean, the amount of work that has been given into keeping it safe and clean and updated, and you talked about the jumbo screen that's there where it was already kind of big to begin with and now it's just like 2.5 times bigger,
The
which
biggest.
it's
The
absurd.
biggest.
It's like, okay, you've walked into the floor of a Walmart into their electronics department and here's this giant freaking screen. Like I love it, but also I'm like, did we have to? And also the idea of then moving away from this is like,
Yeah.
is newer, better, faster, stronger, is all of their they're flashy and they're cool, but are we taking away from the heart of Denver being a football city and a sports city and kind of shoving that out for the means of being like keeping up with SoFi and Allegiant and all of the other stadiums that exist out there that are continuously, at a heavy ticket price, and
Mhm.
that's twofold of the idea of these giant mega stadiums. So
Yeah.
it looks great and it's in the distance and there's going to be decisions being made, but if it's hurting the football fandom, I don't know how it's going to impact me or others down the road, and that's a
Yeah.
scary thought. So would I love them to have a dome? Maybe, but that just means that someone's going to be sitting in my seat attending the Final Four, and what am I getting from that? So
Exactly.
I feel a little territorial right now, and I don't know if I'm on board with a new just to do it.
I'm right there with you. And I think like I've been in SoFi. I think SoFi is a beautiful stadium. Um, it's also home to two NFL teams, not just one, right? So also the whole thing about like a a full dome or like a partial dome, it's also taking away the the natural forces at play in the Mile High City. My first Broncos game that I ever went to was majorly affected by a huge snowstorm, and that was part of the Mile High magic that is created in that stadium every season. It's a part of that game, and we're going to take it away, right? So many fans have amazing memories of seeing games in that stadium passed down from generation. And I just don't see the appeal other than, like you said, greed in moving the location, building of this massive stadium that the taxpayers are probably going to have to pay for in some form or fashion. I mean, we're dealing with this in Portland right now, trying to build a baseball stadium where the state is saying it's going to cost us $800 million to build the stadium, but they want to fund it through the jock tax, and which fine with me. But if it's going to raise my taxes, a lot of people go against it. It's why Portland doesn't have a Major League Baseball team to begin with. We almost got the Nationals back when the Expos were leaving Montreal. Taxpayers said, no, we don't. We had a stadium, and all they had to do was upgrade it. And they said, absolutely not. No, we're not going to pay for this. So I just don't see where Broncos fans will want to take on that responsibility when you literally have the richest ownership group in the NFL, one of the richest ownership groups in sports. How much is a new stadium going to cost? Couple billion, right? If you're going for like all the bells and whistles, couple billion, probably. Right. Drop in the bucket. That's a drop in the bucket for Walmart. That's nothing. They've replaced the grass how many times since they bought the team? No other team is doing that. No other team is spending that much money. But building the big video board, how much did that cost them? Lots of money. It's just like, it's greed at the end of the day.
In the good graces of Broncos country, that pendulum is going to swing, and it's going to be volatile. Yep. And also, this is coming from someone like me who hates the weather. I hate the cold weather. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. But if it meant giving up, kind of that freedom to be where we're at right now, I might fight tooth and nail. It's not like I have any bartering ability. I don't have any. I don't have any say. I can't just like call up Damani and be like, listen, dude, I'm gonna be upset. But but the idea here is like, what's fueling this? Because I get it. New stadiums, there's some that are so run down that they need the facelift, and maybe it's not a long-standing solution. I would just hate to see it happen right now. You don't want to wait till the bricks are falling off, like the seats are degrading, or like the stadium caught on fire. But that wasn't because the stadium was old. So why do we got to do it?
I also think about, just from my experience going to games too, that stadium is so accessible from multiple different means, right? You can drive and park. Great. You can take ride shares. You can take public transportation. You can walk. Like you could literally walk to the stadium from downtown. And that's so accessible. Now, all of those people who are like, oh, I can just walk to the game. Now they got to find a hotel close to
Enjoy your 45-minute without traffic drive into southeastern Colorado, and
get ready for a new
also sightsee later.
Get ready for a new tollway.
Yeah.
Get ready for a new tollway. That's another way that they could help pay for the stadium, but it's going to piss a lot of people off. I mean, it's just, I don't see, you have a stadium that's so accessible now, and people who are flying in from out of town, like myself, people who live in downtown or around the stadium who can just walk and enjoy that's being taken away. And I don't see that, outweighing, oh, it's a beautiful new flashy stadium, and we can have the Final Four here. We can have more concerts here. We can have we can have a Super Bowl here now. That's always been the big thing, right? I don't know. I don't see it outweighing all the fans that are going to complain about it. So
I don't either. Yeah, but we'll see.
Bri, last thing that we're going to talk about here. We will talk about the 30 visits, but Courtland Sutton, we touched on that earlier in the show. His contract is up at the end of the season. Extension is very much on the table. Nick Kosmider from The Athletic has been talking about how the extension talks are ongoing. There's a lot of positivity surrounding it. Courtland Sutton will be at the voluntary camp. So that's a big sign of his commitment to the team. Extensions, the team did say that extensions for players like Courtland Sutton, like John Franklin Myers, Zach Allen, Nick Bonito, Ben Powers is another guy, but I don't know if he's going to get extended. Those are going to be tabled for after the draft. For Courtland specifically, the number that we've been seeing is north of $20 million per year. And I just don't know how to feel about that. He's 30 years old, going on 31. Let's phrase it this way. A, do you see an extension getting done at or after the draft? B, how long do you see that extension being and for how much money?
Oh, as I'm looking through as I'm looking through the list, I'm sort of just aghast. I was looking at void years, so 2026, and then I was looking at total guaranteed right now, which is 0 because they front loaded, and kind of split that out. So he's sitting at 13.7. North of 20 is wild when you look at Stephon Diggs and Mike Evans being at 21 and 20 respectively. But Jerry Jeudy's sitting at 17.5. So there is a question of whether or not you could split it over, I don't know, 4 more years. He's 30 now, and that's pushing it. So, okay, 3 years and 18 and match him with like Christian Kirk. And I think that's where my head is going. But anything more than that, you're looking at I want him to get paid. I don't want Courtland Sutton to be in a contract poor position or take a team friendly deal, but I feel like that's where he is right now. Like I could see where both sides are not on the line, and they're not seeing eye to eye. They're waiting. They're saying we're going to push it down the road, and then waiting until after the draft, you put yourself in a sticky predicament, because then you have to make that decision, and it's probably not going to go in the benefit of Courtland's camp. So like correct me if I'm wrong, but Court wants to get this done prior to the draft, and we're running out of time. You got like 3 weeks to really get that all shimmied up. So I bet you it goes after the draft, and then hard conversations happen and it drops to 17.5 or 17.
Wow. Looking at the top guys right now, Jamar Chase got his massive extension. He's north of $40 million a year, 73.9 million guaranteed. That is the top, right? We're not even going to look at that. DK Metcalf, thanks so much. Thank you for that terrible, awful contract. 60 mil guaranteed, almost 33 million average per year. I think that is going to be the one where Courtland and his agent go to the Broncos and say, well, DK is getting almost 33 million a year.
Yeah.
T Higgins is on the franchise tag. But Debo is at 23.8. He got 41 million guaranteed.
I mean, Scary Terry's at 23. So are we being reasonable? Are
Godwin at 22?
Are we underrating Courtland Sutton's impact here?
Yeah.
Or maybe I am.
I think maybe it is a little bit of undervaluing on your end, but I'm thinking of what he's done in the last 2 years, right? Had a career high in targets this last year, and 10 touchdowns the year before with Russell Wilson, and then with a rookie quarterback showed that he could still be that guy, right? The wide receiver one term that everybody loves. But like Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin, I consider Courtland to be a better all-around receiver than DK Metcalf is. That contract is just insane to me. But I feel like that contract is going to be the one that they slide over to George Paton and say, meet us in the middle here.
All right, then 26. That's my highest offer.
26.
That's where I'm switching it.
So let's do 2 years plus a void, right? 2-year extension plus a void year at 26 million, right? How 26 million per year. How much guaranteed are we doing here?
Okay. All right. I need to do the calculator because all the numbers in my head are scaring me. Let's do,
because that would be essentially a 2-year $52 million deal.
Well, and that's my 3 years, 17 and a half. So if you void
Sure.
the year, and then what's the guaranteed money on that?
So
that's a great question.
With Chris Godwin signed a 2 or a 3. I think he signed a 3. So 3 years, 66 million, 44 of that guaranteed. So like 2/3 of it is guaranteed. Are you giving him that much money? Are you giving him that much guaranteed? Or are you going to front load that thing? I would probably front load it.
Yeah, I'd probably split it. Because what are you looking at on that? That's like 36, 37 guaranteed.
Yeah. Okay. It'd be around there. So
you know what? Yeah, because we're right in the cusp of where we've been very smart with things. I think you could afford to front load it.
Yeah.
And that would also probably be in the best interest of Court. So
yeah, because he'll be 33 going on 34 by the time that second year is done. So that's tough. There's a lot of questions in between. Can he stay healthy through that? He stayed healthy for the last 2 years relatively, but can he continue to stay healthy through that? Those are the questions, right? And that's kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning of the show is, what if they find a receiver in this class that they view on the same talent level as a Courtland Sutton, and they say, we could have Courtland Sutton level talent at a fraction of the cost. Happy trails. Like, you can get this contract extension somewhere else, right? I think
you can't build and you can't buy chemistry. So yeah. I think that's the delineating factor.
And that's the tough part, is he's built this relationship with Bo. He had a good relationship with Russ, whatever. That's come and gone. But now he's got this relationship with Bo, and I think it's a really good one. And you need a solid veteran receiver for a guy like Bo Nix to rely on. And I think Courtland Sutton is that guy. The guaranteed money scares me. The length of the contract scares me, but I'm hoping it's in that 2-year range.
Yeah, I think you convinced me, because the math works itself out. It shortens it up a little bit. You're still guaranteeing that you're getting the most out of him for that time frame.
Exactly.
And I don't see right now like a viable like trade option. Like you're not
what
really
are you going to get for him?
Yeah, it's not replacing what he brings to the table. And so often we just say production, but like there's more to that, I think, in this circumstance. So yeah, I think that would work.
Yeah. You heard it here first on Bleav in the Broncos. When the contract extension happens and it's really close, if not the exact numbers, we're going to post that clip. We had it first.
But
we're
only
saving
then.
We're saving
otherwise
it.
We're deleting it.
It'll never exist. Bri, last thing before we get out of here. We talked a little bit in the last episode about top 30 visits. The Broncos have added a couple more names to that list. Texas defensive tackle Vernon Broughton has a 30 visit. Eastern Washington wide receiver Efton Kism is taking an official 30. Indiana linebacker Jalen Walker, Texas State guard Nash Jones, and Texas running back Jaden Bleav, I think is an interesting one. A lot of speed there, but a lot of fumbles as well. Any of these other names that we've mentioned, in addition to the other ones we talked about in the last episode, that are getting you a little excited for the NFL draft?
No, there's not enough. There's not enough on the list. Not enough is changing. I want to see more. Also, I need to do my due diligence and get into the film room to look at some of these offensive line prospects that they're bringing in, because I
Yeah.
want to know what we're dealing with here. Because as you mentioned, there's some contracts and some negotiations that probably are going to fall through for the Broncos out of sheer necessity, as the production just hasn't been there. So would hate to see that big of a turnover. But we were talking off camera about Wedig being an absolute super freak in his measurables. And I think that's important to note there. A little bit of prospecting going on, that it would be bad to move on the inside. So you're looking at some tackle depth there. But how long for the Broncos or McGlinchey and Garrett Bowles? You got to start thinking about what that line looks like down the road. Because again, as we mentioned to start, 2030 is just down the road. And 2032, where the asteroid lives, is also not long for this world. So depending on how long that 2-period season feels like, we gotta make some changes there. So it's really great for freak athletes, and I like to say it like that because it's like visiting the circus and seeing all the people who like to stick knives in their noses. I am entrenched with the idea that you get to just see all these huge physical specimens, and then hopefully they're a little fast and they aren't getting off center and thrown around like a bunch of rag dolls. So it'll be interesting. I want to take a look at kind of what they're thinking there for the line. Listen, whatever happens with the running backs, I'm not super bought in on. I know, again, frustrating for Broncos country, but there's so much relative talent. I think they'll bring in, like, I don't know, 7 undrafted participants too, just to see. Because think about it, Sean Payton loves the kind of mindset of nothing's guaranteed. And I don't think anything should be guaranteed. You mentioned it to start off, is there's going to be competition across the board. Even if you think you're the starter, listen, you're not safe. And it's not to create this like intimidation factor. It's to get the most out of your guys. You don't think that Patrick Surtain comes in all the time trying to be the next best guy, even though he's the best guy. I think it's just a work mentality. So I love the idea that Jaden Bleav gets added to the list. They're from Texas. I know there's a lot of hate towards the Longhorns. I don't get it. I don't understand why we got to be doing that. But I also they're not in contention with my alma mater, so who cares?
Jaden Bleav, Gunnar Helm, a couple of Longhorns on that list, as well as Broughton. Hey, they're doing a lot of good things down there in Texas. I know Vance Joseph has a connection.
The way they do. There's a couple of them on the team
connection
too.
There.
Like, let's think about it.
Yeah. That is going to do it for us, Bri. NFL draft 22 days away from now. I'm really excited. I know you're really excited. Let the people know where they can find your wonderful work.
Oh, neat. You can find me on most social media platforms as Bri Maestas 303. I'm hard to miss, bright red hair. But also you can find me intermittently there over on the KOA airwaves. You can find me on Let's Talk Broncos with Joey Richards and Zach Seegers. You can find all of our work on letstalkbroncos.com, which includes Patrick's work. So don't let him be humble and modest over there. Letstalkbroncos.com. And you can follow us, the Let's Talk Broncos pod, over on Twitter. I don't answer DMs, so don't even try. But if you'd like to send hate mail, I'm sure you can figure that one out.
We'll answer that one. I am Patrick Chiotti. That's Bri Maestas. Make sure that you subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Make sure that you leave a review as well. Go over and follow the YouTube channel, where I'm going to be posting this video. And we will be back with perhaps a mock draft exercise for reals this time. They're always fun to do. And Bri, you and I think would make a good mock draft duo. And I think we'll come away with some good picks. So
right. I love it.
This has been Bleav in the Broncos. Thank you so much. Make sure you follow us and don't forget to subscribe. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.